The Vancouver Canucks fire blanks in their first home game of the new year, get shut out 3-0 by the Nashville Predators. It's time to break it all down right here on Rinkwide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside our Rinkwide Vancouver studios, downtown Vancouver on a Friday night. It's Jeff and it's Irf with you as the Vancouver Canucks came home for a one-game pit stop before a 5-game road trip. They scratched out a win in Seattle. They were trying to make it back-to-back, but you got to score some goals to win hockey games. And for the longest time, there was only one goal in this game, but a couple of empty netters made it look a little more one-sided than it ultimately was. This was a 1-0 hockey game. And the Predators win it. 3-0 is the final. How many times have we done Rinkwide here where we've lamented the home ice record? Canucks get shut out at home for the second time this season, also on the wrong end of that 6-0 trouncing by the New Jersey Devils way back when. So been a little while since they hadn't scored a home ice goal, but really didn't do an awful lot. There were a couple of chances here, but over the second half of the game and down the stretch with the goaltender pulled and a late power play, really didn't do an awful lot to test Juuse Saros, who picks up his fourth shutout of the season. Rinkwide brought to you in part by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. And we want to hear from you. Irf and I will break it all down, give you our thoughts. We want your thoughts as well. And of course, if you want to make certain that your comments or questions get through to us here at Rinkwide, you can hit us up with a super chat in the YouTube live chat. And partial proceeds of all super chats are going to go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Steven Stamkos has scored a few against the Canucks through the years, and many here at Rogers Arena, including his 500th NHL goal a couple of years ago. Man, still got it. Makes goal scoring look easy when you put it on a tee for him the way that the Predators did there in the second period.
19 goals in 22 games now against the Vancouver Canucks for Steven Stamkos, a guy that only plays them twice a year. Now, a little bit more with the Nashville Predators, but yeah, I mean, what can you say about Steven Stamkos and just the longevity of his career, and probably one of the more underrated guys in the National Hockey League for how long he's played and where he's played. I think that's probably why, but, you know, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, and then you know, didn't get re-up in Nashville in Tampa, and now has to go to Nashville. But this Vancouver Canucks team, Jeff, you look at it, and when we talked about it, and we were worried about them not being able to take a lot of shots. So they got some shots tonight. They weren't very good ones. They got 50 hits in this hockey game. Exactly. But that's kind of where the chat's at right now, with a lot of people saying that this team needs to wake up. You know, management decisions is always kind of is a little loosey-goosey after a loss, for sure. But I think the shot choice and the shot selection, even though they had that many, weren't very good for this team.
Well, they did put one puck in the net. Teddy Luger thought he had opened the scoring 13 seconds into the second period, but goal was waved off immediately by the on-ice official as Dakota Joshua was tangled up with Nick Blankenberg, and there was some goaltender interference there. So hard to argue. Lots of hockey left at that point. It's still a scoreless game. You're the home ice team. These are the Nashville Predators, who don't win very much home or away. So I'm not going to point to that and say, hey, that was a turning point. Yeah, obviously the Canucks wanted to open the scoring. Maybe the best scoring chance came really early in the hockey game when Vinny Desharnais brings JT Miller for a breakaway. Now, we saw JT in the shootout wander off to the side and then cut across, use that move that he always does in shootouts. Was effective. Or if he had enough time, it kind of felt like he could have gone into shootout mode. Ends up shooting from basically between the face-off circles, and Saros stared him down, made that save, and 26 others as this night went along. So JT had a breakaway. Connor Garland, that was probably Saros' best save of the night, second period there. From my vantage point, as I was looking down that side of the ice in the press box, there was a ton of ice, and I thought, all right, like, there's the goal. Juuse Saros had other ideas. Saros is good. I mean, the Canucks know that from the playoffs last year. They've seen him at All-Star games and you name it. And he was dialed in. Hasn't had a lot to work with this season, obviously, But this is wild. We do all these stats that stand out. This one isn't the stat that stands out, but it does to me. Just his 9th victory of the season. 4 of them now by shutout.
Yeah.
So when he's on,
He's really on.
he's on, and he was on tonight. The save on Garland, I think, was his best of the hockey game.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree there. And look, he's one of the top tier goalies in the National Hockey. There's a reason why the Nashville Predators paid him a lot of money to backstop their team and try and take them to the promised land. But on the other side, I mean, Kevin Lankland played a pretty good hockey game, Jeff. He gave up the 1 goal. I mean, in all accounts, it was a 1-0 hockey game until the 2 empty nets, but they still lose 3-0 on the score sheet. Kept the Canucks in it when he had to. He, picked up exactly where he left off yesterday in Seattle, where he came in and had to be sharp, and he was definitely sharp again in this one. And it was the guys in front of him. Yet again, we sit here and talk about it again, where, the players that need to put the puck in the net, the power play opportunities, the stars that are there right now. I know they're missing Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, and obviously Thatcher Demko, but you still have JT Miller, you still have Jake DeBrusk, you still have Connor Garland, and Pius Suter, Teddy Bluger, Kiefer Sherwood threw the puck at the net a million times. I don't think one was really dangerous. They all just kind of hit the goalie. So they're going to have to figure it out here because they go on this road trip, and it starts in Montreal, who's been on a little bit of a heater, lost in Chicago, but then really go through a gauntlet of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, so we talked about Miller. Low ice time last night in Seattle. You thought maybe he'd be fresh, had the opportunity early on. Ends up with 4 shots on 8 attempts. So puck on his stick, in the offensive zone. You'll take those sort of numbers from JT Miller. In past seasons, you'd think 4 shots on 8 attempts. Like, there's got to be a goal in there somewhere. Well, goals have been ridiculously hard for him to come by. And if he's not scoring, it gets thin pretty quickly without Elias Pettersson and obviously Quinn Hughes generating from the back end. So for JT Miller, that's up to 12 games now without a goal. Mm-hmm. I know he scored in the shootout in Seattle.
Doesn't count.
Run of play. He hasn't scored in 12 games. He has 2 goals in his last 20 contests, and they're both empty netters. Like, that is a mind-boggling statistic. Like, that goes beyond stat that stands out.
Yeah.
JT Miller has 2 goals in 20 games now, and they're both empty netters. One against Los Angeles in early November, one against Chicago the night before the Predators came to town the first time and beat the Vancouver Canucks. So it's fair. When you think of the amount that he plays, just the amount of oxygen that he commands in that locker room and right now in this marketplace, what they're paying him, 2 goals in 20 and they're empty netters, not good enough, nowhere close to good enough, but he had company. On a night when you get shut out, you can go up and down the lineup. Brock Besser didn't have a shot on goal.
Yep.
Brock Besser was on a heater earlier in the week. And that is Brock, right? Like, he's streaky, he scores in bunches. When he's on, but man, was he quiet in this hockey game on a night when the Vancouver Canucks needed anybody to step up and be the hero. Jake DeBrusk with just the 1 shot on goal in this hockey game. And it got to the point in the third period where you can't blame Rick Tocchet. Like, he's looking for some answers. He's looking for a spark. So starts to mix things up. And lo and behold, Phil DiGiuseppe finds himself back in the top 6. And that's not a knock on PDG at all. He was hustling. He had 8 hits. He drew penalties. But this is what it comes to, that you're down and you need offense. And a guy that has spent most of this season in the American Hockey League all of a sudden finds himself in the top 6. Without Elias Pettersson, like, there are other guys that know how to put the puck in the net, that can put the puck in the net, but we saw it in Calgary the other night. No 5-on-5 goals there, just a third period power play goal by Brock Besser. So, they didn't get shut out in Calgary, but struggled to generate offense there. And here tonight, they get shut out as well. So, I look at the top of the lineup here. They're 1-2-1, 1 win in 4 games now without Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. And you knew it was going to be a tough road to hoe, and certainly it's proving to be that for the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah,
you mentioned the shots of Brock Besser and the top guys in this lineup not being able to generate more offense. And it goes back to them missing Quinn Hughes. Like, you talk about the Hart Trophy and all that. He is the most valuable player for this team, but there's a bigger problem because he just can't be the guy as a defenseman being the only one that generates offense all the time, Jeff. Like, there has to be something else from someone else on this team. There has to be a game where Jake DeBrusk, is able to grab a hold of it, or a guy like JT Miller. We just mentioned that statistic, 2 in his last 20, both into empty nets. Connor Garland's gone pretty quiet lately as well. So there has to be more from these types of players when they're without Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. I mean, Elias Pettersson by his standards, hasn't had a great season either. So it just can't be Quinn Hughes all the time.
No shots for Besser. One shot for Connor Garland, who did score last night. Pius Suter has gone quiet. He's up to 11 games without a goal. He had one shot in this hockey game. Niels Höglander, no shots, had been playing a little bit better, took an offensive zone penalty that seemed to steal some of the momentum from the Vancouver Canucks. Canucks, by the way, I didn't mind the way they played. I thought in the first period, both teams had chances. Gus Nyquist, I thought, might have a sleepless night. He scores an empty netter, so he kind of gets off the schneid there. But, boy, he had a couple of glorious opportunities in the first period, and Kevin Lankinen was up to the challenge there. And we talked about the JT Miller breakaway. Canucks moving the puck around a little bit in that first period. First period had a fight, a couple of big boys, Mike McCarron and Dakota Joshua, so there was some spirit in this hockey game. And for the Canucks, back-to-back and 3 and 4, you wondered how much energy they would have. I thought there was a fair bit of energy in the first period, but as I look through my notes here, it's a scoreless game. Into the late stages of the second period, the Vancouver Canucks didn't have a shot on goal over the final 8 minutes of the second.
Yeah.
And then Stamkos scores, and all of a sudden they're trailing. And usually that's a wake-up call, and then we see score effects in the third period. Third period shots were 8-7. 2 of the Predator shots into empty nets to seal this thing. But, yeah, there just really wasn't much of a spark. And again, 3 and 4, maybe a little bit of fatigue here, minus the players. It is a grind. We knew that it was going to be difficult for the Vancouver Canucks, but we also said, you're playing the Kraken twice. You're playing the Flames. You're getting the Nashville Predators. These are this is the soft portion of the schedule. It gets really difficult here really quickly as they head out on the road now for 5 out east, starting in Montreal on Monday, and then into Washington, back-to-back, Carolina and Toronto, and it finishes up in Winnipeg. So that's going to be a difficult portion, and maybe they get some reinforcements and some bodies back here, but with the group that they had, just one win now in their last 4 games since Christmas, and as a result, they are treading water. They're taking on water. They're going to remain above the playoff bar just because it wasn't a busy night around the National Hockey League. But look, they're 18-12-8 now on the season, so 18 wins and 20 losses, stay on 44 points. That home record is just putrid. Get me the barf bag. Get me the bucket. 7-8-6. Now, they don't play at home for a while because... Again, 5 in a row here coming up on the road, but 7 wins in 21 home games. Paying customer sees the Canucks win 1 of every 3. Not good enough. Just nowhere close to good enough, and one of the reasons that this team now is fighting for its playoff life. And I know that they're not even at the midway part of the season, 38 games in, but instead of thinking about repeating as division champs and contending with the big boys in the Pacific Division, the Oilers... they were winners tonight, so they moved 2 points further in front of the Vancouver Canucks. And here are the Canucks now. The company the Canucks are keeping, the Calgary Flames, the Utah Hockey Club, St. Louis Blues are trying to work their way into the conversation as well. Those are the teams that the Canucks are going to have to find a way to fend off.
Yeah, but when the Canucks do get healthy, they're probably better than the Calgary Flames, the St. Louis Blues, and Utah. The problem is the Canucks aren't taking care of business against their inferior opponents when they do play those teams. Right? When they play the teams like the Calgary Flames, like the Nashville Predators, you're not able to go and collect wins where you should be doing it. Monday night against the Montreal Canadiens, you got to go and get that win. It's the beginning of a road trip. I get it. You travel across the country, whatever, but you have to go and try and get those 2 points because the schedule does become increasingly difficult as we move forward here. And then, heading into the Four Nations and then into the trade deadline, and we'll see what happens to this roster or what type of position they'll be in the standings when the trade deadline comes in, Jeff. Around that time, it'll be fun to do these shows as well. But Ibrahim in the chat says, it was an embarrassing effort to a team that was on home ice to let a team that's 30th in the standings beat you. And I think that a lot of people are echoing that sentiment in our different social spaces where, you just mentioned it. They basically won in every 3 home games they're winning. Yeah. It's the home ice record where a team that was so good on home ice for so long can't get a win at Rogers Arena, and it's insane. There's something going on there where they're not ready to play or something like that. But this one is definitely one to keep an eye on as we keep moving forward this season.
Well, let's get to the 3 stars here, and we'll get to our own 3 stars in a moment. The 3 stars in the building, selected by the Sportsnet crew: UC Saros, Kevin Lankinen, the 2 goaltenders, and Steven Stamkos. So On a night when it really is a 1-0 hockey game, makes picking the Stars pretty easy, and those sort of mirror our 3 stars as well. No doubt that the shutout guy, UC Saros, he's the first star of the hockey game. I got Stamkos with the winner. He's 12th of the season. He's the second star. And Lankinen, who made the saves that we talked about off Nyquist. What about the toe save off Luke Evangelista when it's a 1-0 hockey game in the third period? That was the kind of save the Canucks needed in that moment to stay in this thing and think maybe they had an opportunity, because moments later, Evangelista gets the high sticking penalty on PDG, go to the power play, maybe muster a single shot. How about that? For starters, didn't happen. But Lankinen was there making saves for the Vancouver Canucks as he's done all season. Tough spot for him, getting thrown in cold last night in Seattle and then having to turn around. And he knew he was getting this start, but that's always difficult to play that position on consecutive nights. So shout out to Kevin Lankinen, who's been terrific for the Vancouver Canucks, and he is the third star of this hockey game. All right, we got a super chat.
Yeah.
We got Casey Shuffle coming in with, in my opinion, Demko, the only real trade chip to make a meaningful improvement this season. Did the Canucks miss the boat on getting any value for him? Of course, super chat part proceeds go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, so we thank Casey Shuffle for that.
Well, no, because we didn't know if he was he didn't start this season, and there was question of him coming into camp of being healthy or not. And remember when it was, he'll be ready for the start of training camp.
He was there in Penticton, saw him on the ice. And then it was, he might not be ready for the start of the season. And then it was the end of October. Then it was the end of November. And ultimately it was December the 10th. And here it is, not even January 10th. And he's out again. And we don't know. We'll see if Rick Tocchet's asked about whether he's going to travel here on this road trip. As for his market value, look, goaltending is always voodoo. Kevin Lankinen is the perfect example of that. You just never know where you're going to get it, when you're going to get it, how much it's going to cost you. And where would the Canucks be without Lankinen? That's kind of a scary thought. If they went into this season with Artur Silovs and Yuri Patera, as it looked in training camp before they finally got Lankinen to sign on the dotted line. But, you tell me, find me a team out there. There'd be a team that would be interested in Demko, but at what price? Who's giving up massive assets for a guy right now whose health is completely uncertain?
Oh, they're going to want those medical records for the last few years of Thatcher Demko before a team even sniffs of even thinking about acquiring this player. But look, Thatcher Demko, when he's on, Vezina caliber goaltender. The problem is when he's injured, we have to use, I know quotations, is it serious? Because every time he gets hurt, how long is he going to be out? And I think that it's an unfortunate thing because Thatcher Demko is such a big part of this team. He has been such a big part of this team for so long, but it's going to be interesting to see where Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin want to go, as he's got one more year left. They're going to have to make a decision on Kevin Lankinen here at some point on what they want to do with their goaltending. But yeah, there may be a team out there, but it's going to be it's a tough ask for a guy that is proven that he just can't stay healthy.
Right, and when I say there would be interest, but at what cost? I just don't think teams are going to be parting with massive assets right now for a guy who has one more year left at $5 million, and then it's going to be fascinating to see where it goes from here. It's just unfortunate that the body seems to betray Thatcher Demko, and there's a fair bit of mileage on that body, as you said. When he's healthy and right, he can be as good as anybody in this National Hockey League, but we've seen it for the last couple of seasons. It's just been way too difficult for him to stay healthy, and we'll see. Again, there wasn't much of an update earlier today. Rick Tocchet just sticking with the back spasms, said you never know with these things, can be tricky. And obviously they had to fly Artur Silovs across the country to be the backup for this game. So any hope that Demko was going to, recover overnight after a quick flight home from Seattle, they couldn't take that chance. If you're the backup, you got to be ready to play. And so Demko sits this one out, and we'll see. They get the weekend off. Their next game coming up on Monday in Montreal, the start of a 5-game road trip. Did I mention that the Predators have 4 road wins and 2 of them are in Vancouver now? That is ugly.
That's another unbelievable stat.
It is. There's a bunch to come out of this hockey game.
Yeah.
Another one is that there were 8 minutes of power play time both ways. The Canucks had 3 power plays. The Preds had 2 that they overlapped a little bit. So a total of 8 minutes of power play time. There were no power play shots. None. Not a single power play shot. I'd have to go back through the the game logs. The last time that there wasn't a single power. I mean, there were the odd game where there isn't a penalty or a power play, but not a single power play shot on goal.
Yeah, Jordy Angus in our chat. Can we talk about how bad our power play is? We'll just go the power play for both teams. But perimeter, again, for the Vancouver Canucks. And it's just, guys that are not doing their job, not getting in front of the net, not getting shots. Shots are getting blocked. I do get it that, players do block shots, but you have a man advantage. You're that talented and you're that good of a hockey team, and you get paid a lot of money. Like, you've got to create your own chances here. If you're the Vancouver Canucks and you're JT Miller or you're a guy like Jake DeBrusk or even Brock Besser, like, there were times where in this hockey game where there was it looked like JT was disinterested. Like, it really did, and even last game as well, right? I know he went out and firing shots early in the game, but there were other parts of the game where he just looked like he was firing passes to teammates that they weren't able to negotiate on their sticks and things like that. So it's not good. Our socials are blaming the head coach, obviously, for the power play, but he's the one that's run the power play, but he definitely has a lot to do with it. But it just doesn't look good. And it's more so to that. It's like it just shows how bad Quinn Hughes is needed on this power play.
Right. So that brings us to another thing here, and we talk about a night of just crazy statistics, and hopefully people can digest them all here. But here are the Canucks down 1-0. Remember Pius Suter in the third period had a sort of one-timer from the right circle? Got a pretty good look, and Saros made the save. That came with 10 minutes to go in the hockey game. They then got the power play with Evangelista off. No shots on goal there. Just going through this here as I work on the fly. Yeah, the Suter shot came at 9:21. So there was more than half the period. They had one shot on goal the rest of the way. The rest of the night, they had one shot on goal. It was Tyler Myers late in the hockey game. So no forward after Pius Suter had a chance to tie this game. Like, that's just, that kind of stuff blows my mind. So I go back to the power play. They go 0 for 3 on the night with no shots on goal. Back-to-back games, 3 and 4 nights. You wonder about fatigue. Yes, you were able to grind out a victory that you almost gave away in Seattle. But eyebrows raised across Canucks Nation when Erik Brannstrom sat out last night in Seattle and Guillaume Brisebois plays his first NHL game in a couple of years. And gave them what he could and was all right in Seattle. We haven't really talked about the sequence that leads to the Stamkos goal, and Brisebois was a big part of that, unfortunately. But, again, where Rick Tocchet pushed every button right last year to be Coach of the Year, how about some fresh legs? And how about a guy that actually can run the power play and can move the puck? And Erik Brannstrom sits for a second straight game, and they end up losing really a 1-0 hockey game. There's enough to go around here on these nights, and I just wonder, again, it's so clear that this coaching staff doesn't see Brannstrom the way that a lot of the fan base does, even though he's not a perfect player, but when you're missing your best player and you've got a guy that at least is in that mold of a puck mover that sees the ice, has some offense, I don't know. I mean, it looks like that decision... Did they lose because Erik Brannstrom wasn't in their lineup? I can't go that far, but they didn't generate a shot in 3 power play opportunities. Would they have looked better with Brannstrom in there? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is. It's one of those decisions that everyone that watches this team, whether it's fans or people covering it, and not even just people in Vancouver, but around, saying, why is he not in the lineup? Right. And I think that, the question needs to be posed, whether it's he doesn't like him in his own defensive end, whether it's a lefty righty thing. You can't tell me because he doesn't move the puck well, because that's one of the only things that he does well, better than everyone else that you have currently that does play. And I get it. Vinny Desharnais can make a really good stretch pass. Right. But other than that, there's not much to like from his game or forward. And I know they've been okay, but you've got a guy where, even if you're limiting his minutes and playing him, down the lineup or down in that 5-6 pairing, at least have him out there to quarterback your power play.
Yeah.
Right? At least have him out there to quarterback your power play, because Tyler Myers there isn't the answer.
Myers ends up playing 22 minutes and 44 seconds, so down about 3 minutes. But again, back-to-back at this stage of his career, that's a big ask when he played as much as he did in Seattle. You look at some of the other ice times, Vincent Desharnais up at 21 minutes and 40 seconds. Vinny D led all Canucks, in fact, led all skaters in the first period in ice time, almost 8 minutes. So again, you're asking guys to do so much more than they're regularly asked, and as a result, 1 win in 4 games now without Quinn Hughes. So Rick Tocchet postgame was asked about the availability of the injured guys, says Demko will travel along with Hughes and Pettersson. The coach says he'd be shocked if they didn't play at some point on the trip. So, from that, we're reading between the lines here, but shocked if they don't play at some point on the trip, but that doesn't necessarily scream they'll be ready to go on Monday in Montreal.
No. I think Demko probably later in the trip. I think that Elias Pettersson might be a little bit later as well. I think Quinn Hughes might be the first one that comes back.
Which is interesting because that certainly wasn't the way it was laid out originally. But somebody that watched Elias Pettersson shooting or skating this morning at Rogers Arena said, skated, didn't shoot pucks. And so you just wonder, trying to keep the cardio up, but if he's not shooting pucks, what does that say about whatever it is, upper body that's ailing him that took him out of that game at home against the Seattle Kraken just before Christmas, and we haven't seen him in game action since. Want to get to the stat that stands out, and we do that each and every episode here of Rink-Wide Vancouver, so we'll bring up the stat that stands out. On a night that the Canucks establish a new season low for shots surrendered, doesn't matter. Big deal.
Yeah.
Again, get the confetti cannon out. Yay. They held Nashville, the worst team in the NHL, to 19 shots, and they still couldn't win. The previous season low was 21 in Vegas in the game before Christmas, which was back-to-back then as well. Whether you give up 19 shots or 90 shots, if you don't score any yourself, it doesn't really matter. But that is a stat that stands out that for the first time all season, the Canucks hold an opponent under 20 shots. Nashville had 9 in the first period, 3 in the second, and 7 in the third period. Adds up to 19, and the Canucks had 27 shots on the night. So, all right, I mentioned back-to-back, or this is troubling now. Like, every team has back-to-backs. It's a fact of life in the National Hockey League. Long schedule, you get some sequences where games are stacked. The Vancouver Canucks are now 0-4 in back-to-backs. They don't have a single point from 4 back-to-backs. Twice they've lost to the Predators. Both times the Preds have come to Vancouver, they've caught the Canucks on the back end of back-to-backs, and they've left town with victories. But 0-4 now are the Vancouver Canucks, and their next back-to-back next weekend, Carolina on Friday, into Toronto on Saturday. But you can't, where every point matters in the standings. You're not going to win every back-to-back. I get that. But you have to win some. You have to find a way to dumb it down, grind it out, get an incredible individual performance where somebody puts the team on the back, goaltender, I don't care, whoever. You can't look at the schedule and go, back-to-back, there's lost for us. Good teams find a way, and I think it's fair to say right now as they approach the midway mark, it's impossible to call this a good team. You are what your record says you are. They're a pretty average hockey club.
Well, wouldn't we have the discussion, was it in December, first week of December, or right around that middle mark? I called them an average hockey team. Yeah. And I think that there's people that disagreed, and I think that this team is definitely flawed.
Talent level, they're not an average team.
No.
But if talent doesn't show up and perform and do the things, and 2 goals in empty nets in 20 games, we can talk about talent all you want. It's got to show up and play at the level it's paid to produce, and there's just too many guys that aren't doing it for this group.
Yeah, and it's so apparent when they don't have Quinn Hughes in the lineup, right? That someone else needs to be the guy on this team. Someone else needs to, grab a hold of the game and take it over, and they have nobody that can do it without Quinn Hughes in the lineup, right? JT Miller hasn't done it this season. Elias Pettersson sure as hell hasn't done it this season. Brock Besser, absolutely not. Not when Quinn Hughes is not in the lineup, right? I know he hasn't been in the lineup for a while or for a long period of time, but still, in the games that he hasn't played, there hasn't been anyone that's been able to grab a game and take it over that's up the lineup for the Vancouver Canucks.
There was such a good vibe here last year. Everything went right. The playoffs were so much fun. And look, selfishly, I want to do rink-wide after a bunch of playoff games. I want that for this marketplace that was deprived of playoff hockey for the better part of a decade. The reaction of the fans to the return of the postseason, the energy at the rink, all that kind of stuff. Like, that was, I talked about it on our New Year's broadcast, that for me was really the story. The story of 2024 was, yes, playoff hockey is back, and I so wanted it here in 2025. And it may still happen. I'm not writing them off. Like, they're not even at the midway mark. But for all the people that say, just wait till they get healthy, just wait. It's pro sports. There is no guarantee. Like, look at Thatcher Demko. He comes back, and now he's gone. The Canucks may have dodged a bullet in the second period when Dakota Joshua went down the tunnel, and I thought that may be the last time we see him for a while. So I was really glad to see that he returned to this hockey game. We talked about his scrap with McCarron in the first period. Bit of a strange play in behind the net. Teddy Bluger finishes a check on Roman Josi, but in the process, essentially used Josi as a battering ram. Like, Roman Josi's helmet looked like it caught Dakota Joshua on the knee. We're showing it on the live stream. And, stayed down. Looked like he was in some real pain early. Got to the bench. At the stoppage, went for a quick twirl to test it out and didn't like what he felt, I'm sure. So headed down the tunnel. Anyways, he came back to the hockey game, trying to be a physical force. And we said that about him last night in Seattle as well. He was out there causing some havoc. This time the gloves come off, his second fight of the season. The other one was Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa late in that Canucks victory over the Senators. I was worried for Dakota Joshua there in the moment because it didn't look good.
Yeah, good to see him come back. Didn't look good. It was kind of an awkward play for sure. He went off, probably got everything looked at, made sure everything was all good. You said went for the twirl. He was able to come back and finish the game, so that was good. We got another super chat from screen name JT Miller. Tonight's result makes me a sad panda. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of sad people watching this hockey team, and a lot of sad people probably in the dressing room, but they're the only ones that can do anything about it, Jeff, especially when you lose to inferior opponents, especially the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, look, the Predators they're not a good team. We know that. Some of their players are starting to come along. Marchessault was held off the score sheet, at least goals. He had the primary assist to put that puck right into the wheelhouse for Stamkos. But Marchessault had 5 goals in the last 5 games. Stamkos up to 12 now. It had been a while since Gustav Nyquist had scored, so he'll feel better even if it's an empty netter there. And then the North Vanboy, Colton Sissons finishes things off with his 4th of the season. But these are the Predators, and they don't win many. They came in on a 3-game losing streak. They got pumped in St. Louis. They lost 3-0 in Winnipeg. Lost the other night in Minnesota, and they'd been off for a couple of days, so they were the rested team here. But still, this is opportunity lost for the Vancouver Canucks. And, we've discussed all the reasons why. Statistically, if you look under the hood, natural stat trick, this was a close game. It really was a coin toss, and unfortunately, Canucks couldn't get the offense that they needed. But, scoring chances favored the Predators. But the high dangers were even at 9 apiece, and expected goals basically a saw-off there. And again, only 1 goal scored at 5-on-5. So, I don't know that effort was the issue for the Canucks at the tail end of the stretch. I look at some of the individual performances, like Desharnais and Forbort. The shots favored the Canucks 13-2 when those guys, that's the third pairing. So maybe it's sheltered and softer matchups, but that's undeniable. Vinny Desharnais has stepped up a little bit here. He had played himself out of the lineup for a while, but he's back, and right now it's all hands on deck. And there are issues with this team, but in the here and now, I would say Vincent Desharnais is not really one of them. I think he's actually played reasonably well. Kiefer Sherwood was fired up, obviously his former team. Shooting the puck from everywhere, finishes with 5 shots on goal, 7 attempts, 6 more hits for him. So, on a night when everybody was throwing the body, Phil DiGiuseppe led the team with 8 hits. But, the numbers cut both ways as well, where Desharnais and Forbort and Sherwood all sort of stood out for the right reasons. It was a tough go for Tyler Myers and Guillaume Brisebois.
Yeah.
Myers, the shots were 10-5 in the Predators' favor, so 2-1 margin there. The shot attempts, Corsi, 28% for Tyler Myers and just over 40 for Guillaume Brisebois. Now, it wasn't those two guys together. It was Brisebois and Desharnais that were on the ice for the Stamkos goal. And again, Guillaume Brisebois in a tough spot. Guy hasn't played in the NHL in 2 years, and now all of a sudden you're asking him to go back-to-back. And, when he's playing his game, he's steady, he's not flashy. Get rid of the puck, put it in the hands of others and let them do the work. A bit of a gamble inside the Predators line. Pinched. And I'll give him credit. Like, he hustled back. I like the effort to recover and could have used some help. Others out there on the ice sort of recognizing that the D-man was caught just inside the line. But it turns into an odd man rush for the Preds, and they worked it around nicely. Forsberg to Marchessault, and ultimately Stamkos to the back of the net. So a little unfortunate for Guillaume Brisebois. I'm not going to pin the goal on him necessarily, but it's just another example at this level, especially against guys that have been doing this for more than a decade now. You give them an inch, and those guys will take a mile, and that was the case on the 1-0 goal.
Yeah, just tough spot. I like the effort of him coming back, but he turned around and kind of didn't know where he was,
No.
and he kind of looked up, and they do play back-to-back-to-back at the American Hockey League, but
That is true.
This is the NHL, completely different level. Stephen Wong makes a pretty interesting point. 6 Canucks made the All-Star game last year, Jeff.
Yep.
6. You have 1 this season, right? And that's Quinn Hughes. I don't think anyone else. I think that's safe to say on this roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, there is no All-Star game, so we won't ultimately know.
But yeah.
Yes, for sure, Quinn Hughes. I mean, find me another goaltender in the Pacific Division.
Yeah, it's better than Kevin Lankinen.
Kevin Lankinen might earn some consideration if there was an All-Star. But yeah, I mean, again, like JT Miller with 103 points and is nowhere close to that player right here, right now.
Yeah.
There's Pettersson, the same deal. Brock Besser. When they named the All-Star rosters last year, like, he was one of the top goal scorers in the National Hockey League. Remember, at Christmas time, only Austin Matthews had more goals than Brock Besser.
In November, they had 1, 2, 3 in scoring in the NHL, right?
And so, Demko was all-world in the early going last year. And, yeah, I mean, it just feels like every night now it's more apparent that, cherish the memories of last year. Last year was lightning in a bottle for this group, and it was fun, as we said. 50 wins, 109 points, a division title, home ice in the playoffs, all that kind of stuff. And, last year was an extreme at one end of the spectrum. The adversity and the injuries are at the other end of the spectrum. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And I think we're seeing right now that their flaws are being exposed on a nightly basis, that this lineup and this roster just isn't good enough. And the top end of this roster isn't doing enough of the heavy lifting.
Interesting point from Casey Shuffle that I want to get to, but maybe I won't ask it like this. Where do we think this? He says, why did the Canucks sign Heinen? I'm going to ask you this question. Where do we think the ceiling is for Danton Heinen in this lineup? And he still hasn't found a solid spot. Is he a top 6 guy? Is he a bottom 6 guy? Where does Danton Heinen fall in place on this roster?
Yeah, there were always concerns when he broke training camp as a top 6 guy with Miller and Besser. He's been versatile throughout his career, and I think he's got a solid hockey IQ, and there's that trust factor, a pretty low-maintenance guy, add some penalty-killing utility, but, let's be honest, as you look here, 5 goals as he approaches the midway mark, 10 goals, I think you would have liked a little bit more. This is a guy that scored in the high teens. And look, he could heat up and get on some sort of run. So I'm just projecting as we get close to the midway mark of the season. But he's got 16 points. Like, I'm not sure that I thought there would be a whole lot more than 30 points. It's just there are long, long stretches where you just don't notice him at all. And in fact, there have been a couple of times already this season when I've just been jotting down a lineup in my head or on paper, and I come up a forward short, and then Heinen, that's the guy that I'm missing. It's like he doesn't immediately spring to mind, and a lot of the nights you watch him, and you just like to see a little bit more from him. So he's not alone. Hoaglander's up to 31 now without a goal.
Yeah.
24 goals last year. He's at 2. And
he's kind of turning it around a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't love the penalty.
Yeah,
the penalty, it was
are bad.
chintzy, but in a scoreless game at that point, or I guess it was 1-0 by the time he took the penalty, but offensive zone, again, you're putting the refs in a spot to make a judgment call, and he knows that, like, he can't. If he's not going to be producing, he can't be taking these penalties and putting the team in a tough spot. Again, it wasn't an egregious penalty. He's taken worse penalties and further from his net, but still, yeah, I mean, I think there had been a couple of steps forward for him here of late, but it kind of feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And at some point, like, we talk about all those All-Stars last year, and then there was that second layer of Höglander and Joshua, 24 goals, 18 goals, and like
Connor Garland.
that second layer just doesn't exist right now. Like, yes, Kiefer Sherwood's been a nice story. Pius Suter was a better story early on. And not coincidentally, the team was winning a little bit more when some of these guys were chipping in and contributing offense. For Teddy Bluger, I think he thought he had scored, a little disappointed there.
But, Jeff, they're depending on that second layer to be the first layer because the first layer is invincible.
No, did you say
invisible? Not invincible, sorry.
Close, but yes,
close.
Opposite meanings, obviously. No, and you're right. Like, that is, we saw it in Seattle last night. Like, good on Max Sasson, but, you're not going to get a goal out of Max Sasson every night. Like, it's not going to happen. Tyler Myers. So, 2 games here. These last, really go back to the Calgary game where they scored 1 goal. Like, of the guys that you would expect to score goals in the last 3 games, Besser on a power play in Calgary and Connor Garland last night on a breakaway. Pretty hard to win hockey games when the guys in your lineup that you're banking on to produce aren't doing it. And as a result, the Canucks, as we said, just the 1 win, a shootout win. So they've given up points in 4 straight games here now. That's a tough way to climb in the standings, especially when you're playing other teams. Now, giving up points to Nashville ultimately isn't going to come back to bite them in the butt because the Predators have just dug themselves too big a hole. But optically, losing 2 games on home ice to the Nashville Predators, no bueno at all for the Vancouver Canucks.
No.
So, travel day on Saturday. I would assume they get a practice in on Sunday.
Yeah, for
before
sure.
they take on the Montreal Canadiens. Prime game, another one of these prime games. If you struggle to find them on Prime, the game just before Christmas, you're getting your warning here. Figure it out. Buy the package. It's streamed on Prime on Monday in Montreal. And then from there, it's to Washington, it's Carolina, it's Toronto, and the road trip finishes up in Winnipeg just over a week from now. So, we always ask on these lengthy road trips, like, what's acceptable for the Vancouver Canucks? They're at a point now where 500, it doesn't sink them, but you're certainly not going to gain ground on a lot of the teams that you're trying to reel in. But it feels like too big an ask all of a sudden to think that they're going to win 3 of these 5 games.
Well, especially with not knowing if Quinn Hughes or Elias Pettersson is going to play for at least half the games. Right, forget about Thatcher Demko. You can survive with Kevin Lankinen, taking the brunt of those starts. But if Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson are missing 2 out of the 5, or 3 out of those out of 5 of those games, then this team's in some big trouble.
The Canucks have 3 wins in their last 10 games. Calgary's 5-3-2 in its last 10. St. Louis 5-3-2. The Blues were 4-0 winners over Ottawa. Ottawa continuing that lengthy road trip with the World Juniors taking over their building. So Ottawa 4-0 winner. The updated standings, and some people will scream, look, they're not even at the midway mark. Too soon to be checking the standings. But when you are hovering in that final playoff spot, I don't think it is. I think this just kind of underscores the importance for the Vancouver Canucks right here, right now. Like, the final bunch of games won't matter unless they start to win more than they're losing in the here and now. So the Canucks stay in the second wildcard spot. They've got 44 points, but all of a sudden they're 3 points back of Dallas for the other wildcard spot. So there's a 3-point gap. Not insurmountable, but that gap will grow. Canucks don't play until Monday now. But the Canucks have 44 points. Calgary has 43. St. Louis with 42, and Utah at 40. So, they're in a dogfight here.
It's going to be tight.
They are in a dogfight. On talent, you would think, when everybody's healthy, that, yes, the Canucks have the best roster of those groups, but they're not healthy, and we know that their best players haven't been their best players, and that is why they find themselves in the pickle that they are. All right, we'll preview the Montreal game here in a sec, but before we go any further, I want to tell you about Greta Bar. I do this on every episode of Rink Wide. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. And I got an email earlier today.
Yes.
About the next Canucks Army Watch Party coming up middle of January. I don't think we're at liberty to release all the dates, but we have a date selected. I think we're just nailing down some final details. But yes, coming up this month, we can say that now. This month, there will be another Canucks watch party, Canucks Army watch party for a road game. Lots of road games this month.
Lots of road games this month.
Yeah. So, again, hopefully you can join us for that. But if not, make sure that you check out Greta Bar. The street food menu, the weekly drink specials, all the arcade games. They got the big screens. Really a terrific place to watch any game, particularly a Vancouver Canucks game. Again, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. All right. Kind of weird for the Canucks to have an entire weekend off, but that's the schedule. They played a lot of hockey here this week, so travel day Saturday, practice day Sunday, game on Monday. In the meantime, though, the league does go on, and that brings us to our Bet365 line of the night. What are you looking for? Well, first of all,
Winner, chicken
yes,
dinner.
Credit where it's due here.
Credit where it's due. Hope you took that parlay yesterday, chat. It hit. Guess who didn't take it? Me. But it's okay. It's okay. It hit though. I'm just here for the people. Portion of the show brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. Canucks Conversation. Jeff, you and I here at Rinkwide Vancouver. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. Use code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I like Ovi to score tomorrow morning against the New York Rangers. And I like Timo Meier against his old team to score as well. So 2 anytime goal scorers, not going 4 games. I really like those two. Put those together, some pretty good odds for both of those players. I'm going to bet I will be taking Ovechkin every single game, because you just want to see him break the record.
I tweeted it out before the game, and partly trying to have a little bit of fun, but New York Rangers were on the scouts list at Vancouver.
Yeah.
That's not always the case. I had some people say, oh, every team scouts every game. Look, there are a lot of scouts that live in Vancouver and just attend every game. And so it's not a big deal to see the same guys representing their team night after night. The Rangers are not a team that is in Vancouver for every game at Rogers Arena. So it's notable when a team like the Rangers is on the scouting list, especially amidst the noise right now. So I just put that out there. I also thought it was funny that ESPN was pumping up the fact that they had a big weekend of hockey. They've got the Rangers twice. I'm not sure that's appointment viewing, although it's kind of train wreck viewing these days. But they've got the Rangers and the Capitals, so you got Ovi and the Chase. Then you got the Rangers and the Blackhawks on Sunday. Like, who wants that?
Well, the league clearly does when they put the Winter Classic in Chicago, thinking the Blackhawks would be good.
Yikes! Even the Blackhawks don't think they're
The
good.
Blackhawks don't think they're good.
All those comments, but hey, they rose up and they did beat the Montreal Canadiens tonight, and the Habs are next up for the Vancouver Canucks. And just a couple of quick thoughts on Montreal, because this was a team that didn't really seem to have much of a direction in the early going. Young team, obviously. Cole Caulfield up to 19 goals, so he's dangerous every night out. Nick Suzuki leads the team. He's got 36 points. Looking forward to seeing Lane Hudson. It's unfortunate that Quinn Hughes isn't going to play. Because
we don't know for sure, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, we're not expecting him to play. Yeah.
We'll see what Sunday's practice. But Lane Hudson, basically, just when I watch him, I see Quinn Hughes in the making, like a second version, basically. Incredibly skilled. 26 points as a rookie defenseman already. So doing a lot of the same types of things that Quinn Hughes did earlier in his career. Sam Montembeault has really turned into a good news story for the Montreal Canadiens. Has 14 of their 17 wins on the season. And, they had won 3 in a row since Christmas up until tonight. Still, they've won 6 of their last 8. So you look at the road trip and you think, oh, well, it starts in Montreal. Maybe that's the easiest of the bunch. Think again that, Habs, they're heading home after a road trip now, but won in Vegas the other day.
Yeah, they play in Colorado tomorrow, and then they're home. So their first game back after a 6-game road trip will be against the Canucks.
All right. Well, we know the challenges the Canucks often have in the first game back after a road trip, and that'll be 3 games in 4 nights for them. And we'll see if the Canucks. So where Nashville is lying in wait here, the Canucks are going to fly to Montreal. They'll be sitting there on Sunday as the Habs play on Saturday night and work their way back home. So maybe something for the Vancouver Canucks to chew on. This Canuck team that struggles to generate shots, Irf, Montreal averages the fewest shots on goal in the National Hockey League. So we'll see if either team can get to 25 on Monday.
Yeah, no, I think that the Canucks are going to have to come out flying. I think that if you're looking at that schedule, we talked about it, that they needed to take at least 3 out of a possible 4 points between today and Monday's game. You missed the mark against the Nashville Predators, so you have to take 2 points on Monday night.
we shall see. I know Rick Tocchet post-game was talking about the fact he liked 50 hits. Again, I think you'd trade
50 hits for a win.
45 of those hits for a goal or two.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Like, we saw Joshua drop the gloves here for the second time this season. The team had 6 fights in the first 33 games. Like, that wasn't in their DNA. And then, like, I don't know if it's the frustration of not having Hughes and Pettersson. I don't know if it's the frustration of all the noise that's going around, the tension around this team. But they've had 6 fights in their last 5 games, 3 on New Year's Eve in Calgary. I mean, that boosts the total a little bit. But it is a little strange to see a left turn here. Like, this isn't a tough team that's built to, go to battle in that sense, and all of a sudden the gloves are flying off the Vancouver Canucks at a crazy pace right now.
Yeah, but I mean, if there is some fight there.
Yeah.
I think you just leave it at that. Throw to the positive. There is some fight there at some point, and let's hope that it can lead to some goals.
Yes, at the end of the day, it is about putting the puck in the net, and the Canucks didn't do it. They get shut out for the second time this season. Again, 18-12-8 now on the season of the Vancouver Canucks. They will sleep above the playoff bar, but by the slimmest of margins, and now off for a couple of days. We'll see how things shake down in the Western Conference standings. Maybe the best news of all, they're getting out of town.
Yeah.
Don't have to play at home again. Although when they come off the road, the Kings and the Oilers and the Capitals, this is the gauntlet for them. No question about it here through the middle part of this month of January. All right, we covered a lot of ground as we usually do here on Rink Wide. Appreciate all the feedback. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure that you don't miss any content that we put out throughout the hockey season. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you see all the socials there on your screen. Make sure to give those a hit as well. Follow us and rate and review. We love to hear from you. We always like the feedback through the shows. We like the feedback between the shows as well. So if you're enjoying what we're doing here at Rink Wide, and the numbers suggest that you are, hey, we'll be here after every game throughout the regular season, and fingers crossed that there is some playoff hockey to break down as well as this season moves along. But that's going to do it for us here on this night, a night that saw Nashville come to town and defeat the Vancouver Canucks by a score of 3-0. Stamkos, Nyquist, and Sissons, the goal scorers, and UC Saros with his 4th shutout of the season. So we'll be back with the next episode coming up on Monday after the game in Montreal for Mike Rogerson, doing double duty here. Long day for him. We appreciate him.
Big long day.
Sitting in. And for Irf, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.